Hi, Tim Hughes here, co-founder of the Digital Leadership Associates. Getting on to my 15th video. If you like these videos, then please subscribe. Also, the author of the book, Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. I can see that Jake is ready. I'm just going to send him an invite. Really looking. Hey.
Hey, how are you, Tim?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited.
So where are you working now, Jake? And what's your role now?
So I
saw the announcement on LinkedIn this morning. So
that's right. So I'm at Adobe, and I am a manager of inside sales for enterprise. So
right.
I have a team that's dispersed across the U.S. and even South America, and
right.
Taking on 3 of Adobe's finest products.
Right, fantastic! What an opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm quite thrilled about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Adobe are up there in terms of the organizations that you need to aspire to work for. That's you're living the dream.
Well, it's pretty soon, and I'm not quite immersed in it yet, but I will be jumping in, right?
Yeah. So I as part of research for this, I mean, I've been really excited to get you on, and I've done a lot of research and listened to a lot of your videos, and you've done things with Jack Karofsky, and you're somebody that's doing social selling at the moment. You're getting an ROI with it. You're getting a response from it, and you're a social person. So my first question is, so what's your definition of a social selling? Because there's a lot of people that watch, or there's a lot of people out there that don't believe that this can actually, that this works.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely say my definition of social selling has evolved,
right,
quite a bit.
Yes.
I think initially when I started doing it about 4 years ago, my impression of social selling was I need to be on Twitter 24/7, scouring and listening, and perhaps even going beyond the necessity of doing what's called considered social listening. As my career has evolved, and as my understanding of it has evolved, it's become more of a part of my day-to-day process. It's not something that I think to myself, okay, now I need to be social selling. Social selling to me is a part of my selling process, which requires me to do my due diligence, my understanding, my learning, my background on who my buyer is, what it is their business about, and something that I would naturally do now incorporates social media, right? There's more information out there than there ever was. There's more data and insight than there ever was. And so I'm not just going to go to my buyer's website anymore and read their financials. I'm also going to go to the LinkedIn page. I'm also going to go to the specific buyer's LinkedIn page. And I'm going to try to discover who the different decision makers are in the process. I'm going to go to Twitter, right? And I'm going to learn as much about them as I can, so that when I have conversations, I can put context behind what it is that we're discussing.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but inside sales is calling people.
Yeah, I think that's what inside sales has been built off of. But inside sales is also evolving. So inside sales isn't just wearing a headset and making dials all day long anymore. Inside sales is requiring a little bit more specialization. And part of that specialization is understanding how to use the modern tech stack. And part of that tech stack are your social tools. And it's not just making a call. Our buyers are burdened. They're overwhelmed. They need for us to do a better job of understanding their needs before we ever pick up the phone and call them. So part of that is understanding a little bit more about them, and that requires us to do a little bit more homework. And social selling is a way that which we can start to nurture, to learn more about them, and start the process a little bit earlier.
Because one of the things I heard you say on a podcast was that you seem to do an awful lot of work on social to actually qualify.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that there's, here I have is I may have made a call, I may have got a meeting, or I may have got some interest. But what I'm going to do is actually build a picture around it. The call and that piece of interest is actually just a small piece. And what I'm going to do is build up a whole jigsaw puzzle of bits that I can get from social.
Absolutely. Because initially in a conversation that I might have, I might only understand a small portion of what it is that my buyer has been willing to give up to me, especially when they reached out to me first.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps what they filled out in the lead gate or some basic information about themselves. But if I can go search online and find out more information about them through maybe their social profiles or learn more about their job description or things that they're involved in, some projects they may be in the midst of, or perhaps some of the discussions that they might be having with peers in different groups online, I'm much more aware of what it is that they're working on. And then my questions can be more relevant. I can waste less of their time by asking questions that have context behind them.
And do you think that the buying process has changed? I mean, do you see that people are going and self-learning, through the buying process?
Yeah, I think buyers have always been self-learning. I think it's just that buyers have been self-learning with the resources that they've had. And now we have much more at our fingertips. And so buyers are having to do, are I guess, able to do more research.
Yes.
They're, as opposed to doing it the way that what they used to when I was, starting in sales, they were, we were seeing more RFPs, or we were seeing more requests for information, and we were having to do a lot of work to just prepare hours and hours and hours. Now, our buyers are going online to discover, to understand more, to do their, like I was saying, their portion of their due diligence. So they are able to, unfortunately, self-prescribe a little bit more, and that can be a problem because the numbers that I've discussed in previous podcasts that we have focused far too long on are the numbers around how far the buyers are along the buying process by the time they reach out to us. And there's different data points, but roughly we're around that 60% mark by the time our buyers will actually reach out to us and ask us for more information. The problem is that earlier on in that buying cycle is where we see the biggest dysfunction occurring in their buying process, and that's roughly around 37%, right?
I know, an interesting number, but I mean, I'm really interested in this point around the 37%. So what do you mean by this?
Yeah, well, really, we have to credit CEB and their research, the Corporate Executive Board, in the Challenger customer. They exposed this insight, and I think this is something that's been really enlightening for me and my teams, and the way I've coached my teams to sell and social sell, is that 37% along or along the way in the buying process is where we see group buying dysfunction, as they label it, peak at its highest point. And group buying dysfunction is what we would say is where you've got multiple decision makers that are involved in a buying process, and they are tasked with coming up with a solution or defining a problem and then finding a solution. However, earlier on, they're starting to try to define this problem. And by trying to define this problem with all the different resources and access to data out there now that there is, they are starting to self-prescribe a lot more.
So you described it on another podcast, which is, you said that 37%, basically they define a box.
Right.
And so it's like, this is the box that we want to buy one of these.
Absolutely.
And they've gone out and basically self-prescribed and researched and say, this is what we want. And that's when they get to the point where they start going to suppliers at 50, 60% and saying, have you got one of these? So we box, but I've got a ball. It's about the same size. And they go, well, maybe if you shave the edges off or something like that, we can turn it into a ball. But it's already, but the die has already been cast.
Absolutely. And that's why I think the whole challenger sales methodology it became so popular and so well accepted, is because we realized that we needed to change the perspective of our buyer. We needed to change the way they thought about their challenges, or help them understand that the challenges that they really are dealing with are perhaps different than what it is that they're seeing or how they've defined it. And so you're absolutely right. They've painted themselves into a box. The problem is now they're trying to paint their prospective solution provider into that same box.
Yes.
And perhaps because you weren't there at the time to help educate them, they educated themselves on your competitor's website.
Yep.
And now you're trying to fit into your competitor's definition of that box as well.
And I mean, that's interesting because, I quite often talk to people and say that if you look at the usual sales funnel of 0 to 100%, basically that's a zero-sum game. By the time that it goes into your pipeline, there's already a need. They've already decided, there's probably someone that actually has a level of authority, and they're going through an actual, might not be an RFP, but some sort of prescribed process. Right. There'll be the usual, your usual competitors, and we all know our competitors lie and give it away and stuff like that. But ultimately, what you're doing is you get impacting on the margin. And it's becoming a bit of a cliche, but you've got to flip the pipe and basically get above that. And get right above onto social and start helping and educating people to find their box.
And that's the part where that's the other portion of social selling that to me is extremely important, right? That not just being reactionary when we're aware that we have a buyer that's interested and we're using social media to educate ourselves, but it's also being very proactive of listening to buyers out there that are in the midst of this challenge or this buying dysfunction stage, right? When they're at the 37%, some of the behaviors that are going to be common is that they're going to be out there on the different channels, right? They're going to be in LinkedIn groups asking questions. They're going to be perhaps in community Slack channels that you're a part of. If you're not, you should definitely look into Slack and see if there are channels in your line of business that you have community professionals actually interacting with one another. That has been extremely insightful for me. But they're all out on Twitter, and I don't see that happening on Twitter as much anymore as I used to. I've seen my buyers at least have migrated away from Twitter to start asking questions and insight and moving more towards LinkedIn groups and Slack. And
so first and foremost, do you see that the buying process has changed, or buyers have changed in the last couple of 5 years? So you say people have migrated from Twitter. I mean, we use Slack internally in the business. I actually put a question out on Facebook this morning, and I go out and say, can anybody give me help with Slack? And I'm getting like 15 responses in terms of help. Yeah, saying it's brilliant, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. I mean, it's amazing the community and the network I have that actually that allows you to do this. And I see it more and more where people are asking questions.
I do. I think people are moving away. This is my opinion, right? I see people moving more and more away from Twitter because they're gravitating towards more authentic conversations, more authentic communication. We want to have a real connection with our colleagues and our buyers and our solution providers. And so I think that Twitter helped us become aware of the fact that people have a need and people are searching for solutions and answers out to a community. But what I think that we recognized really quickly is that Twitter is almost like it's just a big ocean, and it's a dead sea out there. And you throw your questions out there, and if you're a part of that person's feed in the 5 minutes they happen to look time, then perhaps you're going to get interaction, but then it's gone, and it's gone forever, right? What I think people are starting to migrate towards when I say more authentic conversations is that I can get a lot more into the understanding of who my colleagues are when I've got relationships with them on LinkedIn or Facebook. I have seen a migration towards Facebook.
Yep.
In the last, I would say, 2 years, more than I ever have. And now I'm having conversations with buyers and colleagues on Facebook, which was something I would have never thought would have happened.
I agree. I mean, I mean, something you said, I got off one of your podcasts was the fact that you saw that the buying process in the mid-market had changed. There was, you know, there'd been like an influx of money. They tended to have a bit more money, but they were also doing more of a due diligence in terms of what they were buying.
Yeah, I think you know, in the SaaS and technology space, I think in the mid market we've seen an influx of funding that has I think enabled our mid market and early stage buyers with more capital to make decisions that aren't just based on budget.
Yeah.
In the past, you know, I had a lot of conversations around, well, you know, how much is this going to cost? And
that usually happens like within 10 minutes of you, like,
right. And I think what we're seeing is in this fast-paced, you know, in this fast-paced SaaS environment, not only is there I think the capital that's changing the buyer behavior, but I think you're seeing also an influx of talent. So you're seeing talent that's coming from companies like Oracle and companies like LinkedIn and companies like Google that have, you know, that have been there from the beginning, but have now matured through that organization's process. And now they're going back into the startup world, and they're bringing their knowledge and their insight with them to these early stage companies and helping them go through better buying processes, setting up more sophisticated tech stacks, and requiring that they are doing a more sophisticated buying process. And I think that that's influencing the way that that buyer has been buying over the last several years. You know, earlier on, like I said, I think it was not as complex. I might be wrong, and it might just be, you know, the time I've stepped into this world, but definitely I would say that.
No, I think you're right. I was at an event the other week where they had a CMO speaking, and he said that they did an audit of the number of applications, and this is in would be in like a top 300 size company in the UK. It was a UK based company, and just in marketing they had 27 different applications.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they probably had 2 social media listening tools, two of these and 3 of these, and there were still people phoning up saying, you know, do you want another one and stuff like that. But I mean, he said someone actually said to him, it was a bit of a joke about, you know, what keeps you up awake at night, and actually he said knitting it all together.
Yeah,
trying to get the data from here to here, and is that data right? And that was the thing that was keeping that CMO awake at night.
So I'm going to make a prediction right now that for the last 7-10 years, the top 2 challenges of sales and sales leaders have always been they fight for first place. It's been finding the right kind of talent, number one, and then training and enabling that talent. Right, that's typically number 2. But I see it flip flop. In some years, enablement is 1, and hiring is 2. What I think is going to be kind of the next challenge that's going to be arising is that we've spent so much effort and capital on enabling that new employee, and also we've started to acquire technologies to help us better find talent, that we're going to see the headache of how do I take advantage of my tech stack? How do I integrate my tech stack? How do I collect my data, and how do I best utilize that data? I have a prediction that in the next 3 years, that is going to become a very high concern and priority on the top of that sales or even marketing executives list.
I think so. I mean, with the move towards more focused account-based marketing, and the fact that you know that the data is out there, and you know, it's quite actually, you know, well, I was going to say it's easy. It's not easy for me, but somebody with a more technical mind can basically mine that data. I think that the request for that data and getting access to it, and not, you know, what we're used to is an Excel spreadsheet taken from a CRM system that basically says we're going to do this deal, it's this much, and it's in Q4, and we can't run businesses like that anymore.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that's what is going to make some of these more modern data providers a lot more interesting to be following. Companies like Node and DataFox and Everstring, I think what they're doing to help solve the data problem and using artificial intelligence or AI behind it to collect the mass insight that's out there, I think that's going to make what we've been doing in social selling seem like child's play.
I think we'll look back in 5 years' time and go, did you only have that? Were you only able to get the Twitter feeds? And you know, we've got to remember that actually when we're selling to people.
Correct.
We're not selling to a demographic, or we're not selling to, you know, and we need to personalize it as much as we can. But as you said, if you can get some context around the person that we're actually calling upon, and I usually explain it to, so I started selling 27 years ago. There wasn't any computers. And the first meeting I went to, I said to I was attached to a 40-year-old sales guy and I said, so what do I do? He said, you need to build rapport. I said, well, how do you do that? He said, well, you walk in the office and there'll be pictures around the room. Yeah. And, you know, it might be, it might be football or Formula One or fly fishing. But what happens is you'll go in there and you go, oh, you're into fly fishing. Oh, that's really interesting. And then as you work through the sale, you know, I'm going to the library because that's the only way that you get information in those days. And I'm getting books on fly fishing and reading about certain flies and how they make them and stuff like that. And I become a fly fishing expert over the time of the sale. But what we're able to do is actually get that information now, partly because we're able to go onto the internet, but even more from a mining perspective. Is that what you're kind of trying to say? Or
absolutely. And I think you make a really good point, right? There's a lot of people out there, I think, that are skeptics on this whole topic of social selling. Maybe because we've sensationalized the word. I think social selling to me actually is a ridiculous term in the sense that it's just part of selling. Yes. But the point you just made is that anybody who has ever sold in a field process or door-to-door process has been utilizing social tactic in the way that they've sold since the beginning of time. The greatest salesmen and saleswomen have taught us to be social sellers. And why? Because of what you just said. Yes. When I used to sell the medical device, I used to sell to surgeons, right? I used to go into an office. I would immediately build a rapport with the gatekeeper at the desk. Yeah. And then I would learn in that moment as much as I could, perhaps about the doctor or something that's been going on. And then when I would have only a split second of that surgeon's time, I would have to pull from things that I learned about them or things that I saw in the office or things that I was aware of about their practice so that I could earn a little bit more of their time. So how is that any different, right?
Well, I had someone saying recently, like, yeah, but what you're doing, it's like stalking. I said, yeah, but when you go into reception and there's a signing in book, and one of the things that I'd learned when I was early on in terms of sale was reading upside down. And so you'd be sitting at either someone's desk and you can read what they were writing upside down, or the people that had signed in, and you would basically look at the signing in book and see whether your competition had signed in the last couple of days. Yeah. And that was kind of, that's not okay. It's a little bit sneaky, but come on, that's what you learned when the real bit about selling.
It's not stalking when it's our buyer's best interest that we have in mind.
Yeah. When
it's your buyer's best interest you have in mind, it's not stalking. And I'll tell you this much: it's curiosity.
Yes.
And if you're not curious, if you don't have a predisposition to curiosity as a salesman or a saleswoman, I'm sorry, you're going to fall behind because your competitor is going to be curious and they're going to ask questions and they're going to want to understand and they're going to do a better job. So you better be curious. You better be hungry for information, and how you utilize and how you display that curiosity is what's going to set you apart. Now, that is perhaps where you can become stalkerish or creepy. But if that means learning more about my buyers so that I can better service them and better solve their needs, then I mean, I don't know why that's something that should be criticized.
I mean, you must have, when you were calling upon those surgeons, you would have gone in there and immediately looked around and found something.
Yeah.
And built a conversation based on that certificate, what university they went to. What.
Think about when I would go to the OR, right? I would go to the hospital, and I'd go into the OR, and sometimes that was the only place I could catch time with a surgeon.
Yeah.
So I'd walk in, and I would immediately look up on the board in the operating room what surgeries were on for the day, right? What surgeons were in the operating suite, and what surgeries were on for the day, and what surgeries aligned with the products that I had solutions for. And so I might have been there for one specific surgeon, but by 5-minute glance at that board, I knew I could be spending my whole day at that hospital based on the different surgeries that were going on of the day that I wasn't aware of. And then I could wait outside the OR suite and talk to 4 different surgeons and say, hey, I'm here with Dr. So-and-so today, but I noticed that you're working on these procedures today. Do you need some support? I've got these tools that can help you. And you'd be surprised how I could turn one 30-minute surgery into a full day of 5 hours in the OR. Why? Because I did some social due diligence. I did some curiosity, searching. And I don't think that that's any different than what social media provides to us today. It's just more data. That is my modern day surgical board. Yes. Right? I know what's going on in the OR now because I have Twitter, because I have LinkedIn, because I have even connections with Facebook with my buyers. That is that's better than I've ever had in my career.
Yes, and I think that, and certainly from my perspective, I'm able to do it faster, and I'm able to do it at scale, because actually social media allows me to do that. Because I can just sit there, I've got 20 minutes. I often go to a meeting and get there early because the traffic's so unpredictable in London that I quite often get to a meeting 30 minutes early, and I sit in the car and I'm basically on my mobile going through, looking at stuff. And I can do, the equivalent on there that you probably, your equivalent of looking at that, your OR board.
Yeah, the surgical board. Well, what was the schedule for the day? I like that you bring up that point about speed, right? I can do it faster. And I think that's the purpose of this is sales velocity. I'm seeing this ridiculous argument right now on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere where people are saying, oh, the salesman is dead, or the sales rep is going to get replaced by the tech stack or artificial intelligence. Like, to me, anyone who is buying into that sentiment or that hype doesn't believe in their ability to sell and the importance of a true seasoned salesperson. And the reason behind that is business will always be social, and that is face-to-face and to a certain element. Why? Because there's something about the way we interact with our buyer and with our solution provider that requires that interaction, that requires the understanding. We crave that human connection. We need to be connected to one another. And I think if we sell together, we'll never be replaced. Now, with that being said, the importance of technology allows us to have sales velocity. And so if I adopt technology, then my sales velocity makes me that much more efficient and productive than you, right?
Yeah, and when you mean velocity, I mean in terms of speeding through the pipe or finding the is that what you mean in terms of finding the opportunity?
All of the above, right? Yeah. So either one, getting to the opportunity faster than others. So understanding what buyers are out there, what they're complaining about, and inserting myself in that process.
And just hold that point, because and what I usually say to people is that, because I get a lot of people, this social stuff is rubbish. Okay, but if you get there first and you find it, you can then use your great sales skills to close it before the competition at probably a higher price.
Done. Boom.
Boom.
Right?
Yeah. Why wouldn't you do that?
How is that not the most logical argument out there?
I know. I mean, I understand the thing about AI, and I think it's going to have a massive impact. And I think if you look at a lot of organizations, one of their biggest costs in an organization is the cost of sale. Yeah. And people are always going to look at the way of actually reducing the cost of sale. And I think if you're an order taker, you've got a problem, because I think that is a commodity, and that will always be automated. If you're doing what you're doing when you're selling medical devices, and you need to know about the different rules around evasive and non-evasive medical devices and stuff like that, okay, you can teach a machine to do that, but the interaction that you have with a doctor is social. I did an interview with Lolly Moore from Consumer Affairs, and she said to me, sales has always been social. And because it's one-to-one. And I think, you know, we can do deals on Skype, and we can have fantastic conversations on video like this, but at the end of the day, there is a human thing that you actually have to have. And for the passionate salesperson that wishes to learn every day, that kind of is looking to move on and do something different and do the right thing for the customer, they're always going to be around, certainly in my lifetime.
Yep. And I'll tell you, I have always been that rep that's been in the top 4% of my team, right? I've not been that rep as part of the 40% that hits the quota. I've always been that 4% that crushes my quota, right? And one of the things that's been constant, and the feedback that I've gotten from my managers as I was earlier on in my career, and hey, Chip Helm, if you're out there, you can vouch for this. Mark Malloy, if you're out there, you can vouch for this. I was always pulled aside at one point in my first year at a company and said, Jake, you've got a travel budget that's more than everyone else. You're traveling more than everyone else, and you need to maybe pull back. And I'd say, watch. Just give me 12 months and watch. And if I'm not ahead of the pack, then you can pull back on my budget. And by the end of that time, I'll tell you, my first, one of the jobs I had in medical device, they told me I was the #1 highest expensing rep out of 60 reps in the field. And I grew my territory by 670%.
Yeah.
You think they complained after that?
No.
What about the other job I was talking about? I hit my quota in 7 months. I had 279% of my quota the first quarter, 230% of my quota the second quarter. Do you think they gave me a hard time about traveling and talking to my customer? No, but in fact, they actually held a meeting and said, hey, we're going to be expanding everyone's quota for travel or expense account for travel so that you can be spending more time in front of your customer because it's working. I got myself into more conversations using social. But then I spend time in front of my buyers selling because that's what they needed me to do.
Yeah, there's something else that we're probably kind of close to being out of time, but there's something else that you said on a previous podcast which I wanted to bring up, which was that you actually look for leads and opportunities for your customers while you're out there.
Yeah.
And why do you do that? I do it. I want to know why you do it.
You know, I never thought about it until goofy Jack Kosakowski said, hey, have you thought about just helping your buyers with leads? And I thought to myself, well, subconsciously, perhaps I'm a networker by nature, but no, I've never actually made that a priority. And when I thought about that, I thought, you know, if I'm really trying to add value to my buyer, and I really care about the business and the relationships are long-term to me, then I need them to be around. I need them to be successful. I want for them to be successful. How else can I do that? Well, by all means, why can I not send, other customers? I have so many relationships with different buyers that have so many different needs that perhaps I can't fulfill all of them. But if I can partner with my colleagues and my other buyers and one another to help provide a suite of solutions, then I'm becoming much more of a resource. And so to me, it's just taking that role seriously of solving problems, right? And adding value. And so sometimes I'm not the right solution, but perhaps I know who is. And I'll tell you, some of my current buyers that work with me will tell you that they'll spend just as much time talking to me about other solution providers out there than they do about my own solution. And they value that.
Yeah, I it's something that, you know, we've got a customer at the moment, which is an IBM partner. and they do a whole load of stuff around mainframes, which I kind of thought was like, you know, mainframe's been dead 20 years, but they go, no, we do this, and you know, because you know, if you think about SAP HANA and trying to run it, it's quite heavy from a memory perspective. So I've actually been bumping into people, and then they're going like, yeah, we got this SAP HANA situation. We want to know how someone who can run it. I said, well, these guys could do it, and they can do it like on a SaaS model. And they go, can you connect me? Yeah, of course I can. And of course, you know, if my customer's doing more deals, they're going to spend more money with me.
Absolutely.
I know now I've said that, it sounds like it's really selfish, but actually I do it from a non-selfish perspective. I become passionate about what they do, what my customers do.
Yes. And please, if you're listening to this, don't misinterpret by trying to take advantage of the fact that you can connect your buyer with other solution providers. Don't try to negotiate a cut for yourself in the process or finder's fee. That is where you are being selfish, and your customer will snuff that out as being unauthentic. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, and the thing. So what I talk about in my book is about, this is actually something about what I talk about community. And what you've actually described is what I define there about community, which is where you're willing to basically hand something over for no financial gain for yourself. You do it because you feel it's the right thing to do. And you know that if you connect these two people, their lives will be richer or whatever. This person's got a problem. This has got a solution. Connect the two and stand back. And then the two of them will go, Jake's a really good guy. You need to do, and then what goes around comes around. So you'll suddenly find one of these people will say, yeah, I've recommended Jake, and you'll go, this is where the magic starts. Yeah. There's a reason why, you know, I take my relationships with me to every job I go to. There's a reason why, and I think the importance here is that we need to, and I might piss off a lot of people with this mentality, but we need to get rid of this mindset that sales is extrinsically motivated in the role that we are in, that this is a coin operated mindset. Because to me, saying that a salesman or a saleswoman should be coin operated is offensive. And I'm not full of it when I say that. It actually bothers me when I hear someone say, well, you know, the sales reps are coin operated, throw another spiff at them. And I think to myself, is that really how you see us? We are change agents. We are value providers. To me, we need to find the intrinsic motivation that helps us to want to be a better, you know, a better provider, a better vendor, a better partner, to help build that community. So intrinsic motivation to me is what keeps me up late at night researching for you. Right? It's what gets me up early in the morning, you know, to spend time with you on a phone. I intrinsically am motivated by success with us together. And that to me is the community that you describe. It's not that I can make an extra buck. No, I totally agree. Yeah. And for me, that's where what you'll see, the A players, the senior salespeople, that's what people get. And it's the people that say it's the B players that say I want to cut on it, or why would I? You know, I had a sales guy say to me, why would I educate my my customers? They need to pay me for that or something. It's like, and there's, you know, all those things, but having that higher level of view, and it's kind of like nearly like a religious view of the fact that what I need to do is I need to evangelize about my products and services, and I may bump into people, and at the same time I'm going to do this and say I'm going to introduce people, and then I'm going to step back. Right. And I can do that actually, and I used to do that before there was social media, but now I have social media, I can do it, and I can do it faster, and I can do it at scale. Because sales has always been social, right? Yeah, absolutely. And I see myself as an orchestrator. I don't see myself as someone who's, you know, there just to pitch my solution and make a quick buck. No. That's not a way of maintaining long-term business, and it's not manageable in my mind.
Jake, it's been fantastic talking to you. Could go on for ages, but tell everybody where they can get hold of you, what your Twitter is, or what your LinkedIn, where the best place to get hold of you is.
Yeah. So please engage if you have questions or you want to connect with me. You can get me on Twitter. I'm at Jake Rennie, which is pretty simple. I'm on LinkedIn too. You can find me there at Jake Rennie. But if you can figure out a means of getting a hold of me, I'll always spend some time, chatting it out. So don't hesitate.
Fantastic, Jake. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, and have a good day, because I know you need to probably get your children off to school.
I do.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Cheers, Jake. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.